Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to all for you guys' words, prayers, and for everything in general. De cora se los agradezco. Gracias. And before I get into the story in our hand, I knew I said I was going to post this yesterday. Do excuse, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm not gonna get into it because I got chewed out already by a few people that they're not on here to hear my current problems, right? But the story. But I'll just leave it like that. It's just been difficult. But aquí estamos, y like someone says in the comments, pa adelante, right? But to get into the story in hand is today I'm going to touch on something I've been meaning to touch, right? Or more so, I was waiting for it to get to where it's at in my story or walk. But I've been asked a lot, and I feel like I'm not holding my end right by addressing it. So, anyways, today I'm going to touch on basically incidents that happen here in Mexico when camaradas fall under a certain entity or state in Mexico, faction, and we go back to Cali, right? Or them days where it was you're under a Billy and it was crews, right? Crews against crews to try to take control. All it happens here in Mexico, or it has happened in a bigger scale. For obvious reasons, I want to address camaradas from their city. I'm just gonna respectfully keep their placazo out because it's still around, right? And as you guys know, whatever people consider me is not why I'm on here. And the names I do mention is because they're gone, busted, or by what they're known here in Mexico is not their placazo. Only a people, if you guys get what I'm trying to say, that don't know how the life here in Mexico is for camaradas or norteños or whatever that come from Cali to think you're going to find an article to go off on my name. That just goes to show how ignorant you are to things, right? But anyways, my respects, more power to them people, right? But anyways, today I want to touch on when Jalisco was opening a pipeline or an avenue. It was trying to open up in Tijuas, right? And as you guys know, Tijuas has always been known for camaradas being under the aretes or the arellanos, right? Tijuana. A lot of camaradas, they're supporting for a lot of different reasons, for bad cheeks and just a lot of camaradas, right? And there's a few pilis there. At one point it was Tio Chino, but oh, things happened the way it happened. He was holding it down. And unfortunately, when he passed away, what he left behind got moved on, right? It's part of the game in Mexico. But nevertheless, once you guys are done hearing this, please go and search for Manzano, the homie. He's a camarada again. This saying is placazo, so you can look up articles, whatever. The homie's done Fed time, state time, shoot time. But it's what he's known by radio in Mexico, right? He holds a lot of power in Jalisco as other homies, right? At this time there was a Billy from East LA, Mono, right? He got made out here, and he had a lot of jugo when it came to Jalisco, right? A lot of respect. And there was another camarada from Bowling, and him, the homie Manzano, and Sapo and them. They had like a pointer crew, you go in and hit. They called them the gangsters or cholos, in Spanish. It was Talibanes, cholos, and basically it was all camaradas. Again, like I mentioned many times, Jalisco and Sinaloa, they're states that not only work hand in hand with pilis and camaradas, but Jalisco more so because of the señor, that's in charge of everything in Jalisco. For those that know his history in the states, his arrest, you know why. But anyways, again at this time it was they were trying to open cancha right in Tijuas, and the homie from bowling is he's nuts, right? So they would go in, and normally, just to put a little bit of background, when you open up cancha to a spot where you don't have nothing, for example, you don't have pointers, the government's against you, because that's the most important here in Mexico, right? That you're paying gente, so you're going against the green, not just with them people, but with the government. So how it works, you go in, you have certain spots to crash, hit, and then you just wait on that radio, right, to command that states the encapuchados are coming. Then you punch out. You go to a casa de espera. You allow government to leave, and you go back in and hit. And again, when camaradas and pilis are working in Mexico, it's nothing that we wiggle under in Cali or state matters here. For example, to get government in line right here, especially for a big faction like Sinaloa or Jalisco, right? Darianos had a lot of government working for them, right? Supporting them. So they start picking up family. Keep in mind, these are camaradas picking up family. Start sending little pieces here and there to, you know, there's more paga over here. Line up with us, or they start doing it to captains to, they line up with you. The whole little groupies are gonna line up with you. And little by little you start pulling gente like that. So you start picking up ground. It's shady, scandalous. It's what we're not about, but different animal, right, in Mexico. And the main goal is that, right? To start working hand in hand with government. Again, it's a trash way, but it's the way here. But anyways, I want to talk about Ant. The homie Ant. He was from IE. I'll just leave it like that. And he was in charge at this time in Tijuas of bodegas and different angles. He wasn't involved like that. He was more so on with the Pilis, right? And SD and whatever the avenues over there. But nevertheless, he had an angle in Tijuas that Jalisco wanted it, and the ones taking it were camaradas working under Pili. Again, camaradas under Pilis, camaradas under Pilis, but they're going at it. Now, what I want to pinpoint, old man D, he had a heavy position right in Sonora for Sinaloa, but he was still doing that, snake thing, and he was playing all three cards. He just wanted them doors open, price wise when it came to different wiggles. So he was being the little instigator, and at this time is, as you guys, well, the ones that heard my story on that other channel know, we got cracked, right, in Puente Grande, Jalisco. And basically this how we're being told. Plus, me and Manzano go back to I don't even know what year, the homies from Vallejo, so he's done his share, but where he picked up power was over here, right? For, for family, having a lot of reach in Mexico, mainly in Jalisco, right? But, anyways, we eventually got out, and for certain reasons, we couldn't shake Jalisco. So the homie did us a bottle and, had us in the shadows, right? Cause, we got busted actually, doing some things from Sinaloa against his boss or Jalisco's boss. So, we ain't welcome in Jalisco. That's why I said it before, right? But anyways, there was a big difference. For example, Ant, everything he was doing was returning to Cali, to Pilis over there, the Pili that got made out here, Manzano, Rudy, Sapo and them. They're literally all in it for Jalisco, and that's the one thing I give them that were working for the Aretes, right? That they were keeping true to how it should have been, right? When Bat was out here and them, they were literally there supporting the Aretes, right? But it was different with them. But nevertheless, that side of Tijuas, bodega wise, just pipeline stuff like that. That's where the Señor de Jalisco wanted the camaradas to tronar, right, and take control. So they went back and forth. If you take some time to really look into, like I mentioned his name, right, a couple times, you will see he was no joke. He ain't no joke, excuse me. But anyways, and one time they went and you know, Ant was a good homie. No smug on him. He was doing everything righteous for the Ramfla and you know, regardless he got picked up by Manzano, Rudy and them and the orders were clear as, you have to get used to them, right? Which was get a hielera, make sure it fits in it, right? And make a point somewhere in a place in Tijuas. At the end of the day, they pushed the camaradas out from that area in Tijuas. Not gonna say they pushed them out of Tijuas because they're there, till they have a certain spot, right? But till they still go at it. And not just them two, but it's a three-way thing, right? Because there's a few camaradas that are with the brothers, and there was camaradas that were under Caiman, and but when Caiman turned and is trying to take control of Rosarito, Nogales, in that area, he said he couldn't trust camaradas. That's why you started seeing what you seen at the border, right? When it came to homies, Billy's. But anyways, what I wanted to touch on the most is how easily our morals, if you could call them that, right, change. For example, I did almost 24 years. I'm talking about Cali, Feds, and there was one belief we didn't mess with children or families, innocent people, and at the end, you started seeing it, right, over there, but it was still something rare. But as I was there in the shadows, I was hearing the radios, right, where go pick up their daughter, a camaradas. This is coming from a camarada to a camarada's daughter. Pick her up, go ahead, un dedo, tell him, and this is straight up, tell Bad or tell so and so that Mono sends him saludo. Now just think about the greed when it came to a Pili in Mexico, right? Telling this to another Pili or their crews, right? Most importantly, other Pilis allowing it. Why? Because Mono was touching Pilis on the other side of the border. here, right? For example, well, evil's gone, so evil, Daryl, and just other Peelies, right? So it was looked away. It was no more brotherly love, right? That's carnalismo, that's the myth. And they went back and forth like that. You know, Manzano's brother, he got pulled out from a truck by camaradas. His jefita ran out, and a homie from OC blew her away as the carnal. So now you start a whole new trip here in Mexico, and you start hunting each other down. You know, eventually, oh man, D, I gotta give him that, right? He started having meetings not in Tijuana nor Sonora nor Jalisco. I actually mentioned this for those that know, but further down south, right? And started getting at least all the camaradas together, except the ones that were there in Jalisco. Like I said, they were on a different trip. In this little war, the Pilimono, he ended up losing his life, right? And you gotta give him, if you want to say credit, for whatever deal they worked with Old Man D to turn him in. Pay attention, turn him in to Marine through a meeting and had a whole cuatro set up for him. And for those that know Marine in Mexico, they ain't looking to arrest. You know, that's why, well, it's real easy for somebody that's never done nothing, never been nowhere, don't know nothing to just go off of what he can find, right? I don't even know the wiggle. You don't even know the get down. Cause bet you ask him where Daryl had control in Mexico and he wouldn't even know where to start. I heard somebody else say that Daryl got gone down in a truck or something to that angle. Close, but it wasn't him. You know, and talking about that truck in Hermosillo, it wasn't him. But anyways, it's not important, right? I ain't here to prove nothing. This went on we stood there for what, a few months. We went back to Culiacan and there was some meeting, not in Culiacan, but out in Los Mochis. And I'm not gonna say it got squared off, but it got settled down and there was gonna be more respect there, right? But by the end of this, there was at least 4 families, kids that got picked up, taken, and hurt. The homie aunt, 3 other homies, they got taken out by camaradas. You know, there's a homie from Lomas, right? Look up when he got busted going to war with government trying to open cancha in Guayabitos. Just put Jefe de Sicarios in Guayabitos and he'll pop up. Of course, like I mentioned, the homies from Jalisco, they blend in good, right, with Jalisco. And I was busted with this individual. So, you know, he blended in good, I'm just gonna say. But for those that are from that hood, take a look. You might recognize them, right? So, you know, I know that I say it a lot. It's a whole different animal. They don't like us down here. But there's areas where there are camaradas there with a lot of jugo. But the things that get done, they're not camarada walk, right? And I'm not trying to point the finger at nobody. Because I'll be sincere. We got sent in a few times. And, you know, I'm not an innocent person when it comes to that. Basically, you didn't ask questions here. Especially because you're trying to get the best prices, the most respect, the most trust. So you go in and hit. Fortunately, you know, we always went in point first to states like that. But we had a homie, right? That he was the one that, before he passed on, he was the one that pointed to us to the hills, right? It was safer that way. Well, at least we thought. But please, I wish I could touch on more details, but like I mentioned, camaradas are still there, right? Doing their thing. I said it before. All Valles, Jalisco, Puerto Vallarta. For those that know, Olmeca, Tala, Manteca, all that belong to camaradas. And Tijuas, I'll be lying to you, It's a place that I ain't go in a lot for obvious reasons, right? So no that I could tell you where they're at, right? To the top, but it's not important. The main thing is the things that homies get lied to. Don't allow yourself to get fooled by tecatos, right? To come down here and support, because you can come down here and meet a whole new animal. All that causa down here don't exist. Think about it. If in CDC, right, in La Pintas, all that goes out the window behind dope money. You get put in the cross, taken out real easy. Imagine down here where they're really aiming for something good. So everything's is a misled. Whichever angle you want to look at it. To go to prison on your stripes, what are you gonna earn? Chase a tecatos dope money, or come down to Mexico, and since we're considered plásticos, pochos, they send us in first. 6 out of 10 times it's gonna be to remove camaradas working for a different faction, and all that goes out the window. The worst part is there's a Billy behind, rubbing his hands, hoping we take out the other crew of camaradas to stay with the prize. And at the same time, they're laughing. He hears some love for the causa in Cali, and everything is being permitted. Or you think the police in Cali or feds don't know the movement in Mexico? I'm going to touch on something I touched on before, but I want to get into a little bit more into details of it, right? Is when I should have seen This way and knew he was no longer for the Sureño causa, the kanpol, or even the EME causa. He was gonna keep his position no matter what, as all these individuals. Did you guys hear recently? Well, I will touch on that. Again, I hope I'm able to make sense. I know a lot of people don't like me touching on these things, because I don't touch on it like to the fullest. But by me doing so, I'm going to help certain individuals that, whatever you call me, I would never, and hurt, Billy's, camaradas, and, it'll be something ignorant on my part, right? For many, many reasons. I don't have no type of respect, love no more for them tecatos, but at the same time, I have no hate for camaradas either. I know it makes no sense, but it's, at the end of the day, we just palms, puppets, and speaking by myself, I was a coward that seen things and allowed them to happen, or push my own self with lies to do them, right? But please, I gave you guys some key names. Just they're there. They're there. Believe me, they're there. More so, Manzano. Again, for all them weenies listening, is not his name in the States. In case you're looking for an article to make a video. But again, my respect. It's just, they're funny, I actually seen a live that Who sent it to me? Thank you. I needed that, right? But they always say, right? A fish always dies because of his own mouth. You could talk a good one, but your actions speak louder. Anyways, I hope I made sense again. And do excuse, I'm not 100%. No, again, I was supposed to do this yesterday, and well, I will let you guys know on the live. But anyways, thank you everybody again. Tomorrow morning, I will do the second part on D, as I promised. I don't forget. I literally have, I want to say 1,000 things pulling me, which I try to sort out and keep my word on everyone. But at the end of the day, mine slips. I apologize for it, but I send my love. Excuse this video being so long, and hope everybody rests names. Well, excuse me. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. Buenas noches.